I'm not. And
Wait,
for you to even imply that I would be disingenuous is very annoying. Anyways.
What's that sound?
It's something in that room.
I think you'll be able to hear in the background.
Oh, well. Okay. Hello.
Hold on.
Oh, my gosh. Hello, and welcome back to the Conspiracy Couple podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today we have another very interesting and exciting, well, exciting is not the right word. We have an interesting topic to discuss with you guys. This is an exciting episode because if you are not watching on YouTube, you will notice that there are two things that are different.
If you're not watching on YouTube?
Oh, if you are watching on YouTube, you'll notice there are two things that are different. One, we have a third person here. Welcome back, my sister, Jaclyn.
Hello.
We are so excited for her to be with us on this episode and next week's episode. And if you don't remember, Jaclyn has been on an episode with us in the past. And that was
our first ever returning guest.
Our first ever returning guest. And she was on the JFK assassination video.
Our fourth episode.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that was one of our favorites.
Isn't this 54?
This is 54, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've had 50 episodes in between.
It all comes full circle. So yes, our first returning guest. We are super excited. She's also a conspiracy theory enthusiast, and so we're just really excited to have her on here. Also, we're in a different location. There will be no cats popping in if you're watching on YouTube.
No conspiracy cats.
You might get a parent walking through
that door.
Through that
Conspiracy
door.
dog.
We might get the conspiracy dog, and we might get the conspiracy parent.
Is Trixie a conspiracy dog? I think
No.
she's just kind of a dog.
She's just a dog, yeah. But we are at our parents' house celebrating the 4th of July.
Woohoo.
Our parents'
Your
house.
parents' house.
So if you,
My in-laws.
yes, that is
That's
what
how marriage
happens.
works.
That's how marriage works. And so if you hear another voice or see an animal or a person, that is par for the course. So we'll see how well they respect our boundaries. My hopes are not high.
On the other note, that's probably actually more important. The audio was just going to sound different because we're in a much more echoey room than we normally record in. So the audio is just going to sound different. And that is why. Because this room is not great at sound.
Yep.
We are in a garage.
Like we're in a bathroom.
We're in a
You know, when you're
garage.
in a-
Yeah,
I know, but you know how you go in a bathroom and the acoustics sound different?
Yeah.
Supposedly.
I feel like this is kind of a similar vibe. Try singing.
No, thank you. I don't think anyone wants to hear that. Yes, so there's that. Also, we are recording this on the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July. Happy Independence Day.
We're not releasing this on the 4th
We are
of
not
July,
releasing this
though.
on the 4th of July, but there you go. Also, we want to make sure that you follow us on social media. We have an Instagram, and the handle is Conspiracy Couple. We have a TikTok, and the handle is Conspiracy Couple Podcast. And we also have YouTube, Conspiracy Couple Podcast. So if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe, turn on post notifications, and make sure you like the videos.
Yeah. Go ahead and follow me too. At JaclynSarah _.
I'll put your ats on the screen.
Yeah, we'll put her
Okay.
ads on the screen.
Yeah, if you guys remember.
We will.
I'll remember because I'm editing this.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Marissa won't remember.
No, I won't remember. I'm probably going to immediately forget it. So...
I'm just going to link Snoopy. I bet Snoopy has an Instagram.
Kermit the Frog.
No.
No, okay. So, any updates? Anything else that you think we should talk about? We do have an update.
I never have anything.
Well, I don't know. We do have an update from last week's episode. So, if you listened to last week's episode, you remember that we talked about some of the theories about the Bush family. And one of the theories was George H.W. Bush could have been responsible for the assassination attempt of then President Ronald Reagan. So while Ethan was editing the episode, interestingly enough, it came out that the man who attempted to shoot and kill President Reagan, John Hinckley Jr., was released from prison just last week.
Wild.
So I thought that was a really interesting update.
They should have done it 2 weeks earlier when we recorded that
I know.
episode.
I
We
was
could have
like,
talked about it.
I remember I saw the news and I was like, Dang
Jerks.
it.
Although it could kind of work with the episode. We just didn't talk about it because we'd already recorded it.
Right. I was like, why didn't you guys do it before when we were recording the episode?
How could they not consider you guys?
Honestly,
How could they not
should have
consider
called
us?
They
I
have our
know.
number, I'm sure.
I'm sure. They could have just sent us a DM on Instagram, the Department of Justice.
I mean, we have our phones on the table while we record. They were probably listening.
Oh, 100%.
They listen to the podcast before anybody.
The rough edits, the rough draft. They're
Yeah.
like, Department of Justice. Next time, just send us a DM so we can put it in our podcast, okay?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a housekeeping thing. I actually
Oh.
do have something. Keep
Okay.
your eyes out for a potential new logo and maybe some merch in the future.
Merch.
We're working on a new logo right now. And once we release that, I think we're probably going to release some merch at the same time. So
Yes.
if that's something you're interested in.
Yes. And let us know what kinds of things you would like to see. Obviously, we're thinking like stickers and shirts and that kind of stuff. But if you're like,
Mugs,
I really
Beanies?
love. Okay,
Beanies?
yes.
Maybe a beanie.
Yeah, if you have any other ideas, let us know because we're very open to that kind of thing. Is there anything else? No? Okay.
What are you looking at me for?
I don't
Jaclyn, any updates since, 2 years ago when we had you on the podcast?
Today we are going to be discussing a true crime case that recently had its 25th anniversary since the event. And that whole time it's been unsolved and it's had so many speculations around it, so many theories around it. And we have discussed it as a family. And I know Jaclyn and I have had some ideas and we both wanted to talk. I wanted to make sure Jaclyn was on when we talked about it.
We've been saving this episode.
We've been saving this one. So we are going to be discussing the JonBenet Ramsey case. So before we get started, Ethan, as always, have you heard anything about the JonBenet Ramsey case?
Yes, well, I believe it's pronounced JonBenet.
Very funny.
Very funny.
I made that joke earlier today, and
I
it's still
know.
just as funny.
Well, I would say that. Still
I got the
flopped.
same amount of laughs.
Still flopped.
That's true. It was a flop then. It was a flop now.
I know that, every like 2 weeks, I feel like People Magazine has something about JonBenet Ramsey
That
on
is really
the cover
true, yeah.
in the
Yeah.
grocery store.
Yeah.
I know that she was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
and she was like a little girl. And there's I know that some people think, I won't say it because you always get mad at me you ask me what I think, and then when I tell you what I know, you get mad at me.
Correct.
So I won't say anything, but people think that someone killed her.
Yeah, somebody probably did kill her.
They have specific theories about
Yes,
who killed
of
her.
course. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't actually know how she was killed or
Yeah.
anything else.
Okay.
Or anything about her family.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so I do want to start off with like a little trigger warning and a little disclaimer. This case does deal with some very tragic and sensitive subject matter, which is the death and assault of a little girl. And so I will be discussing some triggering subjects, but I do want to just let you guys know that if that's maybe something that's hard for you, to just be aware of that. And of course, we're going to be very delicate when we talk about those things. So yeah. So you actually did know more than you usually do, so very good.
I don't know if that's true.
I'm going to go ahead and just move on. So we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the family, JonBenet herself, and then the case. And then next week we'll have all of the theories. And there are two main theories, but then there are some offshoots within those.
So we got some background today, theories next week.
Right. So JonBenet Patricia Ramsey, that's her full name, was born August 6th, 1990, and her parents were named JonBenet Ramsey. And yes,
I was right.
her dad was JonBenet,
It wasn't a joke.
and her mom was Patricia Ramsey, but she goes by Patsy, so I'll be calling her Patsy.
They named their daughter after each of them?
Yes.
That is something else.
You don't hear that very often.
I mean, there's like...
That's true.
You'll see people, naming their kids after themselves, like juniors and the thirds and fourths and all that stuff, which is interesting in its own right to me. But to name your kid, like naming our kid Ethan, Marisa, that's weird.
No, okay, I think that the concept of naming your kid after both parents is cool, because it's like, maybe it's just, why would you pick just one parent to name the kid after? Because both parents
Right.
are parents, and they did change the name to be more feminine.
I think that only works in this case because they were able to feminize the
Yeah.
name JonBenet.
Right.
What, you telling me you don't want our kid to be named
I don't want that.
Ethania?
We're just gonna put a cap in that because I
No.
don't want that.
I'm trying so hard to think of a way to
Yeah, it was not. That flopped too.
That's like when, that's like when, so background on my family, my sister's name is Kayla, and my mom and dad thought she was going to be a boy, and they were going to name her Caleb. And so my mom thought she made up the name Kayla by spelling it with a C instead of a K, but it's the girl, so my sister's name is technically the feminine version of Caleb, not the actual name Kayla. But then my mom found out that the name Kayla was already a name, and she
Yes.
just spelled it wrong.
Yes.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's
That's
similar.
kind of-
related,
Kind of.
off topic but related.
And isn't her middle name one of your dad's middle names?
It is.
Okay, there we go.
Wow.
Wow.
What the heck? I didn't get any of that.
How many middle names does your dad have?
One.
One of his one middle names.
My sister has two, but my
Okay.
dad has one.
Anyways, so JonBenet. So she was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and the family was from Atlanta, Georgia. But the case takes place in Boulder, Colorado. So they moved from Atlanta to Colorado. So JonBenet also had an older brother, and he was 3 years older than her, and his name was Burke. She also had some half siblings from her father's first marriage, but they didn't live in the home.
Wait, so she has an older brother named Burke?
Burke.
How come she got the names and not him?
I don't know.
They just were like, Burke.
I don't know, because I've seen other instances where, like, not the firstborn child will get like the junior name, which I don't understand. But I mean,
I don't either.
To each
But
their
I do
own.
kind of like the name Burke.
I like the name Burke too.
It just sounds like a random sound someone made. You know, like back in the day when mothers dying during
I don't know what you're
birth
talking about.
was more common. They were
No,
like,
hear 'em out.
before you die, what do you want to name the child? And she was like about to say something, but she died midway, and she's like, Burke. That's what it kind of makes me think of.
Okay, first of all, women didn't name the kid back then, anyways. Usually, the husband did. Moving
Well,
along. Anyways, so back to the family. So the Ramsey family was a very wealthy family. Her father was a millionaire, and he had very successful businesses. He worked in the computer industry, and her mom was a former pageant queen. So she was like, they would talk about her as like the pageant queen, like socialite. Like she was very well connected in society. The kids were a little spoiled, you could say. That's what happens when you have a lot of wealth. But JonBenet was in particular because she was involved in a very expensive hobby with her mom.
Was it pageants?
Yes. So her mom, of course, the hobby was one that her mom had done when she was younger and that she competed in as an adult as well. And so JonBenet was in child beauty pageants. So I could go on for a long time about how I feel about child beauty pageants.
I've always wondered how people like get into like beauty pageants. If like your mom wasn't into beauty pageants, like how does somebody just get
Yeah.
into beauty pageants?
I was watching a documentary about this while I was preparing for the case. Or not preparing for the case, preparing for this episode. And we'll talk about this, but one of the
Just trying to
theories
solve it.
one of the theories came from another pageant mom whose daughter had competed with JonBenet. And she started putting her daughter in pageants when she was like 18 months because she said that she thought it would be a good way for her to meet other kids her age. I think that there are other ways
Yeah.
that you could do it because I don't know if you guys know, but beauty pageants are incredibly expensive. You have to pay to enter most times. You also have to pay for the dresses. You have to pay for the nails. You have to pay for the hair. You have to pay for the fake
It's
tan.
like a sport. It's like a childhood sport.
It's a
like
sport.
in the same like.
If the sport was like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Like if
Hey,
you
some are.
if you've seen like toddlers and tiaras, it's like they have the flippers to make their teeth look good because they're like 6 and they don't have their adult teeth, and they have all of these
I
things.
forgot about the flippers.
And so it's a very expensive, time intensive, and like it just is an all encompassing hobby. And we are going to talk about a little bit how that kind of contributed to the case. But yes, I don't know if this is going to offend anyone, but I don't have a very high view of child beauty pageants. But
I don't really think that's a particularly hot take.
it's not, no, you don't think so?
I don't really think child beauty pageants are
Very popular.
Yeah.
I think that there's something that you watch because it's like, and this sounds really bad, but like you watch like a car accident because you're like, I'm fascinated with what's going on. You're not like necessarily like, oh, I think this is great and I agree with it. But it's like most people in the population don't participate in this kind of thing. And so they're like, I want to see how people live like this.
Yeah.
I want to see what it looks like in practice. And that's why like Toddlers and Tiaras was like so popular. But most people when they were watching would be like, yeah, this is not healthy for the kids.
Yeah.
Kind of like Dance Moms. Like people would watch because of the drama. But then if you talk about,
Dance Moms.
and then if you talk about it, you're like, all the kids now are adults and they're like, this was really an unhealthy environment for me to be in. This was not a good place for me and my, like I didn't want it. I shouldn't have done it. And so it's just kind of like similar to that, I think.
Yeah, long story short, placing children into adult situations, probably bad.
Yeah, in situations where they have to compete with other girls for who is the prettiest one.
Yeah.
And you can't objectively say, like, this little girl's prettier than this little girl. And women already compete against her, so I don't know. But anyways, JonBenet and her mom were really involved in this hobby. And by the time that she passed, she had already won, like, multiple titles and was very well known in the world of pageants. Mm-hmm. So that's her background. Her family is wealthy. They're very, like, if you look at them, they're just like a really affluent, like kind of all-American family, all-American dream. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked a little bit about her family and what her life was like leading up to the murder, we're going to go to December 26th, 1996, which is the day after Christmas, and is also the day when her murder takes place. So on this day, the family was getting ready to go on a vacation to Florida later that day. And so apparently at the time, the home alarm was not on. They were going to be getting up early and getting ready. And there were two doors of the house that were slightly open. So Patsy is the mom. She wakes up first and she's getting up and about and she's getting everything ready in her family. You know, probably, I'm sure that you know what mothers do before a family vacation. They wake up early, they make a lot of noise, and they make sure everyone's packed and they make sure everyone has their tickets and their bags and everything. So that's what Patsy is doing. So as she's walking down the stairs, she looks down and she finds these 2 to 3 pieces of paper on the back staircase. And she picks up the pieces of paper and she finds that it is a ransom note. And it's a note demanding money in exchange for her daughter JonBenet to be safely returned to her. So like I said, the note was 3 pages long and it demanded that the family pay $118,000 to get their daughter back. And the day of the exchange was supposed to take place the next day, December 27th, between 8 and 10 a.m. So the note begins by saying, "Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We respect your business, but not the country it serves." So that's how it starts off, which is a very weird way to start off a ransom note for the kidnapping of a little girl.
Yeah, and for a very specific amount of money.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that later as well. But yeah, so pay attention to the contents of the note and be keeping in mind that they specifically asked for $118,000. So another section of the note says, "The 2 gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police or FBI, will result in your daughter being beheaded. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions and you stand 100% chance of getting her back." And so the letter was signed SBTC, and to this day, nobody knows what those letters stand for.
Santa Barbara Taco Company.
Correct. Wow, you solved it. Good job, Ethan.
That was easy.
Yeah, honestly.
So Patsy...
Being a detective's not that hard.
I guess not. So Patsy finds the letter, and at 5:52 in the morning, she calls the Boulder, Colorado Police Department and declares JonBenet missing after discovering the note. So the police come down to the house to investigate, and they are at the house at 5:56. So
It's a really fast response time.
really fast response
What is
time.
she called?
5:52.
Oh.
So during the initial search of the house by law enforcement officers, the police didn't find her anywhere. So they come in before 6 a.m. and they're looking and they don't find her anywhere. So very shortly after Patsy calls the police department, John and Patsy get on the phone and start calling their friends to tell them that JonBenet is missing.
So they're immediately doing the opposite of what the note said.
Right. So honestly though, and I don't know if like I would react this way if I were in this situation, but I like to think that if I was in a situation where I read a note that says, don't call the police, we have your daughter, I would call the police. Because I would just be like, I'm not going to be able to find her on my own. Like, there's...
I would call the police, but I wouldn't start calling up my friends.
Right. So it's about 6 o'clock in the morning that John and Patsy are calling all their friends. And their friends then immediately start showing up at the house and hanging out at the house. So by the time the police are there, the house is like full of people.
This is weird behavior.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
So later that afternoon, I'm going to go into more of like the specific timeline in a little bit, but later that afternoon, unfortunately, the body of JonBenet was found in the utility room of the basement of their home, and she was found by her father, John. She
was in the house the whole time?
She was in the house the whole time.
Did they not search it?
We're going to get into that.
Oh.
So it was obvious that she had been beaten, and there was duct tape covering her mouth and a cord that was used to tie her hands together. And there was also a cord around her neck. So her skull had been fractured, and then there were signs that she had been assaulted, and she had also been strangled. So the coroner's report listed her official cause of death as asphyxia by strangulation associated with craniocerebral trauma, and it was ruled a homicide. So if you don't understand medical jargon,
I don't.
basically she died of strangulation along with trauma to the head.
Okay.
Yeah. So a large flashlight was found in the home, which people suspect is what caused the blow to the head, but the Ramseys denied owning this specific flashlight. And the rope that was used to strangle her was also from outside of the home. So JonBenet was strangled by the use of something called a garrote. And basically it's like a rope tied around something to create like a little loop. And what it was tied around was a paintbrush. And it was clear from the autopsy that she had been fighting back against whoever was attacking her, and that she was trying to pull the rope away from herself. And so that led to the call that she had passed from strangulation rather than the head trauma. So the frustrating thing about the investigation is the police are called at 5:52 a.m.
Right.
They arrive at the home like 3 minutes later. So a super fast response time. At that time, they did an initial walkthrough of the house, basically looking for any signs of a kidnapper or an intruder, but they weren't able to find any. So when they come, they're operating under the assumption that she's gone. She's been kidnapped. So one of the officers during his walkthrough finds a wooden door that was secured with a latch. He didn't open the door at that time, but he walked away, and JonBenet was later found behind that door. So something that has been brought up that I also had some questions about was, why did the family not look around the house before the police told them to? Like, I understand calling the police, because I'm sure that if I was a mom and I walked down the stairs and see this...
It only takes one person to call the police.
Right.
Yeah.
So I imagine that I would be like, I'm going to call the police because I want to get like going, but should be looking around the house. So they didn't look around the house before
they called the police, then they called their friends.
Right. So, I mean, they did live in a mansion. It was basically a mansion. It was a huge house. There was a lot of space to cover. But if I lose my library card, I'm tearing up my apartment apart to try and find it. Mm-hmm. Like, if I can't find one of my cats before I go to the grocery store, I'm looking for them. Like, because I want to make sure they're not locked in the closet or they didn't like somehow escape through the
library card to cat.
And just showing. But like, imagine if it's your child that's missing and you find this note and you are not like you have to tell someone else, have someone else tell you to look for them.
Yeah, that is really weird. And I understand that like Patsy's first instinct might have been to call the police because she's the one who found the note.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't, like, what was her husband doing during that time? Like, where was he? Was he just, like, standing next to her while she was on the phone? Like,
because John knows that JonBenet is missing immediately after Patsy calls the police, and he calls his friends.
Yeah, that's weird.
Which is very weird. I feel like, yes, I understand like wanting support from your friends in your community at that time, but
this is literally minutes after you realized your daughter. Like, this isn't a few days later or like a few hours later when you're like, my daughter's missing. Like, I need you. I need somebody to talk to. This is like, I've just found this note. We think my daughter has been kidnapped. I'm going to call my friends and have them come over. To me, I have my own theory, which I know we're not even talking about theories, but I'm just like, it feels to me like the friends came over and made it more difficult for the police to search, almost as if they were trying to make it more difficult.
Interesting thought.
Put a pin in that one.
Put a pin in that one. So 1 p.m., like I said, around 1 p.m. is the time where JonBenet was found. So officers asked John and a family friend to walk around the house and look and see if anything seems off, because he noticed that they were like, John was anxious and restless, and so he's like, okay, John, go look around and see if anything looks weird to you. So the officer supposedly told John to start at the top of the house and work his way down. So John did not do that, and he immediately went to the basement. And immediately went to the basement into the room that was behind the door that the officer had overlooked. And that's where he finds JonBenet. So when he sees her, he immediately picks her up and carries her upstairs. He also tears the duct tape off of her mouth and grabs a blanket to throw over her body. So when John brought her upstairs, he carries her upstairs to the living room where everyone's kind of congregated, and he puts her body onto the floor and covers it with a blanket. When he does this, Patsy sees the body and immediately collapses onto the ground and lays on top of JonBenet's body and is like kissing her and touching her and is sobbing. So Patsy had been kept out of the room. John had kind of said in an interview that he kept her away from it because he didn't want her to see JonBenet's body.
That wasn't true.
What?
That he kept her out.
She came in when he brought the body in, and she...
Well, he didn't do a very good job of keeping her out.
Yeah,
Right.
I kept her out by thinking about keeping her out.
Right, but obviously...
I kept her out by bringing the body to her.
Right. So obviously Patsy sees her daughter, and she collapses onto her and onto the floor next to her, which we're going to talk about
Again, what
more.
were the police doing? Isn't it their job? Like, why was John touching the body? Why did they move her body?
We're going to get into that. So when her body was discovered, it became clear that she had been killed inside the home. That she had not been killed outside of the home and put back into the home, that she had been in the home the whole time. And this led to the question of how she could have been killed inside the house with the whole family there and no one hearing anything. Especially if there were signs of a struggle. So the autopsy also revealed that her stomach contents had fruit in them, likely pineapple, and that this had not been digested yet. So this means that she had eaten the pineapple shortly before her death.
Do we know what her time of death was?
It doesn't say. I didn't find the time of death. But you have to think, okay, how long does it take for something, once you eat it, to be out of your stomach? And it's between like 2 and 4 hours.
I was going to say, you of all people, you would know that.
The dietitian should know that. So it's like between 2 and 4 hours, depending on, how fast your metabolism is and how quickly you absorb something. And fruit is full of starches and sugars, and so it kind of can be digested faster. So a photograph from the home of the day before the murder showed a bowl of pineapple on the table, but Patsy did not remember feeding it to JonBenet. But of course, she's 6, so she could probably just get it herself if she wanted some. There were also apparently 2 sets of burn marks on her back and on her face, so 2 sets of 2. And investigators say that those are likely the result of a stun gun.
She was tased.
Right. And at the scene of the crime, there were 2 sets of unidentified footprints, including a boot print found near JonBenet's body, as well as a rope that was found in the home that did not belong to the Ramsey family. However, remember, this is December in Colorado, and there were no footprints in the snow outside of the home, and there was no sign of forced entry into the home on any of the doors. There was some evidence that a person could have entered through one of the windows, as one of the windows in the basement was broken. So we do have that as a potential.
But you would have had footprints outside.
Right. And people believe that in the case that there was an intruder, that would be the most likely point of entry into the house. And there was a suitcase that was found that had some fibers from the clothing that JonBenet had been wearing on them, which leads some people believe that this was going to be a kidnapping, but that it went wrong, which would explain why there was a ransom note in the first place. And that it wasn't part of the original plan that she would die in the home. However, the investigation revealed that there was no sign of an intruder that had broken into the house to commit the crime. And so something that I saw on a show that on the 2020 special I watched was there were 4 people in the home and 1 ended up dead. And so this from the beginning,
They were rich. They didn't have any like nannies or maids.
just the 4 of them in the house that day. It was also on Christmas. So if you have staff, you're probably gonna let them have Christmas off.
This is the day after Christmas.
Well, it's like early in the morning, the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
So it's
Girl, you're not
5:50 in
rich.
the
Don't
morning.
act like you know what rich
that's
people
true.
do.
So for the early years of the investigation, the main focus was on the family and the belief
sense.
whether or not someone in the family was responsible.
I can see why they would think that.
However, in 2002, a new DA took on the case and he began investigating the idea that an intruder had committed the crime. And in 2003, DNA that had been found at the crime scene was a match to an unknown male and had been actually excluded all of the members of the family. And the DNA that was found at the crime scene had been found on her long john pajamas and her underwear, and both of these samples belonged to the same unidentified male. And this sample was compared to the FBI database of about 1.5 million samples, but a match was never found. As of 2006, the unidentified rope that was found had not been tested. And in 2008, the DA cleared the Ramseys of any involvement in the case. However, the former police chief of the Boulder Police Department firmly disagreed with this decision.
Right.
So that's kind of the overview. So now we're going to talk about, you guys have pointed this out, there were a few problems that occurred during the investigation that really compromised the crime scene. So you know how if you watch any crime show, one of the most important things investigators will say is, don't touch the body, don't touch the crime scene, because it could compromise it and ruin any evidence that they may find. That's why they wear gloves and they wear masks and because they don't want to get anything that's not from the crime scene onto the crime scene. So one of the main issues that occurred was that her father was allowed to move the body out of the basement, which had the potential to totally compromise any evidence on or around the body. So like I said, the finding of her body came at about 1 o'clock when John went down to the basement. And like I said, the police instructed him to go look, him and one of his friends to go look around the house. And the first place John looked was the basement, which was one of the places the police had never looked at.
Very suspicious that that's where he goes
Yeah.
instantly.
Yes. He also took the duct tape off of her face and put the blanket on her, which added more evidence that wouldn't have been there before.
Right.
So any DNA on the blanket is now on her body.
What? There wasn't a police officer searching with them?
No,
Why would you just have
he
them?
sent them off because he's like, you guys seem anxious. Go ahead.
Oh my god.
Let me give you something to do. Yeah,
It's like
people
police-
are still mad about how terribly this case was handled.
In so many of these cases that we've talked about, it's like the police want the killer to get away with it. Like, I don't know. It feels like they're breaking every single rule in the book.
Very shoddy police work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Patsy also touched the body before the police had an opportunity to look at it and investigate, which emotionally makes sense from the perspective of a mother seeing her child's dead body. Like, I can understand the emotion of seeing your child and just like not being like, I need to preserve the crime scene.
No, her doing that, like laying on top of her body and like hugging her and kissing her, like that makes sense to me. The dad like picking up her body and bringing it upstairs and taking the tape off and putting a blanket over it doesn't make sense to me.
If he had done what she did, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
It seems very strange. Very suspicious.
Yes. The police also discussed and showed all of the evidence found during the investigation to the Ramsey family while they were conducting this investigation, and they did a lot of informal interviews with them. Another issue was that her parents were interviewed together instead of separately. So if people are interviewed separately, there's a higher likelihood that the true story will come out in an interview, while with two people, it's easier that either one person will dominate the interview or they'll kind of corroborate their stories together.
Right.
Right.
It's easier to lie if there's two people together.
Right.
They also delayed interviewing them for a lot longer than was standard procedure. So the first formal interview that was performed with the parents was not done until April 30th, 1997.
So 4 months later.
Correct. And this also made it so there was no inspection of their bodies for any possible defensive injuries, collection of their clothes, or getting their stories right away before the two of them could talk to each other and merge their stories together,
Right.
or while it was still fresh on their minds. Also, the crime scene was totally compromised. At the time, JonBenet's room was the only room in the house that was sectioned off as a crime scene. And the rest
That's
of the
weird.
house was open to the public.
What?
So the only room that they considered a crime scene was her bedroom.
This is so stupid.
So, like I said, they called their friends. And a lot of people came to the home to support the family, including friends, community victim advocates, the family's priest. Patsy said the family's priest was there when they found JonBenet's body and that he administered last rites immediately after they found her body.
So did the police get there first?
I believe the police got there first.
And they just like said, yeah, come on in?
Yes. So there's a
Okay.
ton
Because
of...
only the bedroom was the crime scene.
Yes, there's a
We don't need to know anything else.
That doesn't make
Just
any
where
sense.
she was sleeping.
There was a ton of people at the house at this point. Like I said, friends, family, victim advocates, the pastor, and many of the people that were in the house helped to clean up the house while they were there to help out the family,
Oh no.
which
This is making me mad.
is like,
Well, yeah.
I understand that like people who have anxious energy, like I'm someone who, when I'm anxious, I need to do something with my hands. Like I
Yeah.
can't just sit there. I have to be doing something productive. Otherwise I feel anxious. But at the same time, this is a crime scene. And it's like the last thing you do is a crime. Like you don't clean up a crime scene. The police basically admitted that when they first arrived to the house, they didn't really search the house thoroughly, if at all, because based on the contents of the letter, they didn't think there was anything to indicate that she would have still been in the house.
Oh yeah, I just didn't do my job right because I didn't think I needed to.
They're like, well, the letter said that she was kidnapped, so why would she still be in the house?
Well,
So they didn't really search the house. So
Sometimes you think you need to have a permit to be stupid.
yeah.
people do that for free all the time, Ethan.
Yeah, that's true.
They should be forced to have a permit.
This permit indicates that you are stupid.
But
But I don't. It's absolutely insane, and it is very frustrating because you think that if a person is wealthy, they're going to have the police working harder to like help find the criminal. They're gonna be like going above and beyond what people who aren't wealthy are gonna have. But they have all these friends coming to the house, and the police aren't even searching the house.
Unless they were intentionally
I was gonna
being
say, I'm
Unless
not,
it was
I'm
an
not
intentional thing.
throwing any like accusations out there, but usually the only time a rich person who's a victim of a crime is the case is treated this poorly is if the rich person is on the doing end of the crime.
Yeah.
Just saying.
That's saying.
That's sad but true.
Just
Yeah. So I'm sure that you can imagine that after this takes place, it is a huge media
a
circus.
whole lot of people should have got fired.
It's a huge media
Yeah.
circus. So when JonBenet's body was carried out of the home, there were 2 reporters there, but by the next day, it was packed with reporters.
Obviously.
So, I mean, we have this beautiful, adorable, blonde-haired little girl from a wealthy family who is in beauty pageants, And it all comes together to just make this case go insane. And a video I saw was like, this is what going viral was before we had social media. And she was on People magazine. She was on all these things. There was never anybody charged with the crime, unfortunately. And it is still regarded as unsolved and is, I think, a cold case now. However, there are many, many theories about what may have happened to JonBenet. And we are going to go into those in the next episode. But as we conclude part 1 and talking about, the case and what went wrong with the case, what are you guys' initial thoughts? I'll start with Jaclyn.
I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but I kind of play into the family is responsible theory instead of the there was an actual intruder / attempted kidnapping theory. Just because all of the details about the letter and the body being found doesn't really make that much sense to have there had been a real kidnapper. I don't want to sound awful. It's probably not very difficult to kidnap a 6-year-old little girl. I understand.
In terms of her fighting back.
Yeah, in terms of her fighting back. So they probably would have been able to do that successfully and get away with it without how much can let's say that it's a grown man. A 6-year-old girl fighting back, how much is that really gonna affect things? I feel you would still be able to take her and book it. Plus, I don't know about you guys, but the fact that the letter was there at all was a little weird. Usually you make sure that you kidnap the person and then send the ransom note.
Right.
You wouldn't murder them and then
Just
still
drop
leave the
it.
note anyways.
And it wasn't even it seems like the note was dropped as the person was leaving the house.
Right.
But I don't know.
Because
Ethan?
they left her, one last thing. They left her body in the house and didn't even really, it seemed try to hide it too much. So.
They just locked the door.
Yeah. And so it's you would have to have known that they would have found the body and therefore you would not have gotten your ransom money.
Right.
Right?
Unless they were if there is somebody else, they were staying in the house to try and keep an eye on what they were doing.
Oh, so maybe it was a friend.
Well, no, I'm saying somebody was in the house.
Oh.
They're in the house because they say don't call the police. That to me, I'm just my overall thoughts. This makes me so angry because I'm it's just handled so poorly, and everything that the family has done is suspect to me.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
And it's sad when you see a child who.
I get what you're saying about my child is potentially missing. I'm going to call the police. I'm if I read a note that says my daughter has been kidnapped, don't call the cops, bring money, and I'm a part of a wealthy family. I feel I'm going to be okay. I'm going to freak out, look for my daughter. If I can't find her, I'm going to be okay, maybe we should just go along with what they're saying so we can get our daughter back.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just the first thing you do is you call the cops. You haven't even looked around your house yet?
Yeah. At least check her bedroom to see if she's there.
Right.
Or I don't know.
Look around your house.
Yeah.
Try and find her. I just, and then inviting the friends over, going around and searching, everything the police did is just stupid.
Yeah.
And then the fact that the dad and his friend just happened to immediately go to where her body was, and then he just picks her up and leaves her and contaminates the crime scene. And I'm just that is all very weird.
They should have had a police officer with them.
Right. The police messed up big time. The family is acting very strange.
It's easier for me to say the police messed up because as suspicious as the family was, I don't want to be insensitive by being
everybody
well, they
reacts
acted
differently.
weirdly.
Yeah.
It's of course they did.
Yeah, everybody reacts.
So.
And you
fair.
don't want to believe that someone would hurt their child.
No.
And it's very frustrating because I think it's okay, that's really weird, but if your child is missing, the first thing you're not thinking is how do I preserve the crime scene?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to say my child was the victim of a crime, because if you say I have to preserve the crime scene, that means my child is the victim of a crime.
No, yeah,
And,
that's...
But the fact that the police, like, it just seems like, and this is the 90s, like, it just seems like every policy was just like, oh, well, it's probably fine. Like, I'm sure it's fine. Like, I don't think she's in the house. The note says she's not in the house.
It's
So
more
I'm
the
not going to
fact
search the house.
the weird stuff that the family did is more the fact that they didn't look for her at all. Mm-hmm. The fact that they called their friends immediately after calling the police.
Yeah.
And then, like, because, like, everything after that, it's like, okay, yeah. I think the thing is, it's frustrating because if the police had actually done their jobs correctly, then it'd be a lot more obvious whether the family was being suspect or not. But because the police did such a bad job, it's unclear as if the family was just, like, panicking and not knowing what to do, or if they actually were trying to, like, cover something up.
Yeah.
And
And then it's sad because you just think, at the end of the day, this is a child.
Right.
An innocent child.
Right.
Who, like, she's the victim of a crime, but also now the victim of a media circus and the victim of people who are supposed to protect her not doing a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is very sad and it's very tragic. And I think we're, kind of all on the same page and, hearing about what went wrong in the investigation. And that's going to be a really good thing to keep in the back of our mind when we're talking about the theories. So with that, we're going to close part 1. Next week, we'll have all of the theories. So remember everything we talked about today and keep that in your head when we're thinking about, okay, who could have been behind this? We want to thank Jaclyn, of course, for coming on, and she'll be back on part 2.
No, we're kicking her out.
So she's actually...
You get the background, you don't get to know the theories.
Right. So we will be back in 1 week with the theories. So we will see you then. Bye.
Bye.